Hello, guys. David Vose here. It's a beautiful day, but it's a windy day, and it's supposed to snow 2 or 3 inches. It's already flurrying a little bit, and we're going to get like 50 mile an hour winds or something. This is the first storm or cold weather we've had all winter, other than that one snow that was about an inch of snow and it was gone the next day. But, guys, I hope you're having a wonderful day. I have got a blow your mind right out of the cranium information for you. This is going to throw the entire world, scientific world, for a loop. Unless they ban me from speaking, unless by the time I'm done with this video, I don't know if they let it stay up for a while until it goes viral. Maybe it won't go viral. If it doesn't go viral, this information, then it's not possible that they're not doing something to stop my videos from even being known or getting out anywhere in some crazy way. That because just word of mouth, when if I were to go out here today and see a ship come down out of the sky and land in front of me, and I'm videotaping the whole thing, and an alien opens the door and he walks out and stands, there and looks at me and walks down a ramp, and I'm videotaping it, and he's got a big reptilian head and big eyes and slithery tongue, and he walks over and puts out his hand and shakes my hand and starts talking to me, and I got this all on film, and it's not AI. I mean, how could I prove that? If the alien got pissed off at me and pointed his radar gun at my cabin and blew it up, and you could see it on film, and then someone could come and verify the cabin had been like melted to the ground, or I don't know. If I could do something completely provable and put it on film and get it out there, and if that didn't go viral, but more important than something stupid thing like that, is if I had information to prove that the earth was not a globe, or, and I don't mean just, oh, the water remains flat on every surface and, blah, blah, or, oh, it's, I can see farther around the horizon than I'm supposed to. I mean, that's pretty good information. I've done that. But I can see why that wouldn't go viral. We've had a lot of videos saying that, and people are like, well, I don't understand, maybe it's refraction or whatever. But, it's not. Okay, but if I could be on any shadow of a doubt, and we've already done that in regard to how far it is to the stars and things like that. But if what I'm going to show you today is so powerful, it's so mind-boggling and so factual and so provable, and it absolutely and clearly disproves the model of the earth as we're being told. And that gets out to, say, 2,000 people, let's just say, because that's normally what would happen here on this channel. It's that's the only people that been watching my videos and know I'm out there, and they're going looking for me every day. But no one else finds me unless you happen to share it with somebody or whatever. But if 2,000 people watch this video, and you're confronted with this information, and you don't like, whoa, and tell somebody, and they watch it, and it doesn't go viral somehow, just from word of mouth, then something crazy is going on here. So anyway, I don't get any monetization, by the way, guys, on any of this. So I hope you will support this channel, because I'm about to share some things with you that ought to be made known everywhere worldwide. But here's what would probably happen if it started to go viral. They probably would immediately take my channel down and just erase me. They might even come out with men with black robes or something and whack my head. I don't know. But anyway, here we go. Put your seatbelt on, get your cup of coffee, sit back and enjoy this, because even a lot of you flat earthers are going to love this. And I'm not even saying by any of this, I'm not trying to prove that the earth is flat. But what I am trying to say is that something's going on. So I asked AI the question, how far is the Antarctic ice shelf around its perimeters? How far is the Antarctic ice shelf around its perimeter? This is AI, its overview, and it says, according to NASA, Earth Observatory data, the perimeter of Antarctica's ice shelf is roughly 53,610 kilometers, or 33,312 miles. Now, already, some of you should know what's being presented here, and your radar should have been going off, beep, 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 because most of you, all of you know that the Earth is only 25,000 miles around the equator, or anywhere around. If you take a point anywhere on Earth and go all the way around the perimeter, well, at least the equator, we don't know, it might be slightly oblong or a little bit different if you went around the other way, but the equator is supposed to be 25,000 miles around. And we're told it's a round globe, so, pretty accurately, even, maybe a little eggy shape. So it's possible that it could be a little bit less around some particular perimeter. But for the most part, about 25,000 miles around the perimeter of the Earth. And yet, the ice shelf down at the bottom of the wheel, where it should be a smaller area on the bottom of the wheel around Antarctica, which is just a continent, they're saying it's 33,312 miles. Here's what I mean. The circumference, the perimeter of the Earth, is much, much larger than the perimeter of Antarctica. You can visibly see that. Like less than half. I mean, probably a third. Because the equator is 25,000 miles around. So that, and it's a globe, so it should be 25,000 miles around it, any perimeter. But that little spot, that little continent called Antarctica, should be much smaller. Now, what if we measured Antarctica and it was much larger than the circumference of the Earth? Larger than 25,000 miles around. Well, that might lend credence to some crazy speculations that you probably heard. You probably heard that once you get to the ice wall, you keep going and going and going and going. Maybe it's not the bottom of the wheel. Maybe it's getting bigger and the globe is much bigger, or it's just a landmass that just keeps going. It's flat. And of course, the further you go out from the point in the middle, which we might make the North Pole, the center, and it's a disc or it's flat, then as you go towards the ice wall, it should be getting larger, right? Because the disc it's further around the perimeter of the disc than it is a perimeter of some circle within the disc. So, I'm not saying that's true. You've probably heard people talking about the theory that you get to the ice wall and you go another, I don't know, 1,000 miles or whatever, and pretty soon you get dinosaurs and paradise, and some say you're going into the inner sanctum of the hollow earth, or some say you're just going on the perimeter of another flat earth or another ring, or beyond the ice wall there's other continents and it gets warmer. Some say there's other suns beyond that. And I've even heard, and it's very interesting, that perhaps these things we call planets that we can see that don't have the same motions as the other stars, they're more local, and they may look like little stars from where we're at, but perhaps they're not that far away, just like our sun's not that far away. But they're further away than our sun. They're maybe as big as the sun or bigger, but they're further away, so they look smaller. And they go around and around, and there are rings, and they provide sunshine for people beyond the ice rings or something. This might fit kind of with the idea of each planet being a plane, and as you graduate, you are perhaps living under the influence of a different sun, which we've called planets for all these years. There are 7 planets, and they've always said that the sun was one of the planets. The moon is one of the planets. And the other 5 planets, the sun and the moon, and the other 5 planets make 7 planets. So if they're all planets, then maybe the sun just looks bigger and the moon looks a little smaller, or not as bright, but maybe it's because the sun is at the top and it gives us light, but we can faintly see the glow of the moon, but then you see Venus and you see, the other planets, but they're further away, and they're circling way out around on a disk that goes in a much wider perimeter or something. Who knows, right? These are speculations or ideas or theories that people have had, just thoughts that come up into the mind. We haven't got any proof, right? Nowhere we have any manuscript that would say any of this, although the other day we read the book of Enoch and it seemed to talk about 7 mountains, and somehow we're on one of the mountains or something, and then there are angels on other mountains, and they were like different worlds or some strange things. Even in our Bible it says that Sophia makes 7 pillars, right? And what is that? Are they the 7 planets? But she says that it's her house. She makes 7 houses. So I mean, you could do a lot of things with a lot of quotes from scripture, and then you've got the whole dome thing. What's the dome? We'll get into that here in a minute. So I asked this question to AI, and they gave me this ridiculous figure for the perimeter of the Antarctic. And then they go on to say, and it's kind of like an excuse, like they know it doesn't sound right, it's crazy, it's like they're trying to hide something. And they go on to give these excuses here. Key points about the Antarctic ice shelf. Ice shelves line the entire perimeter of Antarctica. Varying sizes, different ice shelves along the coastline have different sizes and shapes. Important for monitoring, measuring the perimeter of the ice shelf is crucial for studying climate change impacts on Antarctica. So that wasn't a typo. The team identified a perimeter for Antarctica's ice roughly 33,312 miles. Means that the ice shelf is around 450 kilometers long, it's around 20 kilometers wide, and 100 meters thick or something in the north, 600 meters thick in the center, and 75 kilometers wide in the south. So they got this all figured out. But it would be impossible. Let me show you a picture to show you how impossible this would be. Here's Google Earth. Let's back out. Now I want to explain this. Some of you probably maybe don't know exactly what I mean here. But the equator would be right around Ecuador. And it would be all the way around the equator would be 25,000 miles. Okay? All the way around. Now let's go down to the bottom and go to the Antarctic. So now the entire circumference of the globe would be 25,000 miles. And right in the middle of that, you've got Antarctic. And they're saying that it's 33,000 miles around Antarctica. Now, I get it. There's coastlands and ins and outs and so forth. But it would be impossible, even with all the ins and outs, for that to be 25,000 miles or 33,000 miles. Just look at the differences with visual. Let me show you something here. I'm gonna measure I'm going to drop pin it there, and we're going to measure it and see if they're telling us the truth. perimeter is 10,000 miles. And that wind is really blowing, guys. So they're saying it's 10,000 miles. Now that would make sense, okay, to me. Because that would mean that this whole area is 10,000 miles and the perimeter of the Earth is 25,000 miles. That makes more sense. So let me go back and ask AI what's going on here. And look at this. So I ask AI, why did AI tell me the perimeter of equator is 25,000 miles, but the Antarctic ice shelf is 33,000 miles? And their answer is, an AI might have provided incorrect information, stating the Antarctic ice shelf perimeter is larger than the Earth's equator, because the ice shelf perimeter, when measured along its jagged coastline, including all of the ice projections, can appear significantly longer than the smooth circular path of the equator. Even though the landmass of Antarctica itself is much smaller than the Earth's circumference at the equator, essentially, the ice shelf's perimeter is calculated along a much more convoluted line compared to the equator. Earth's equator, a relatively smooth circular line around the Earth's widest point, resulting in relatively straightforward perimeter calculation. The Antarctic ice shelf, the perimeter of the ice shelf includes all the edges of the ice, which can extend far out into the ocean, creating a much more irregular and longer coastline when measured. But I'm not understanding how that could possibly be, because let me just show you once again. If you measure the perimeter of the Antarctic and you go around each jagged edge, some of you might be thinking, well, maybe they're right. Maybe if you added all the little jagged edges, it would be maybe as big as the whole Earth. I don't think so, but maybe. But we're not talking about as big as. We're talking about 33,000 miles, which is almost 10,000 miles more than the entire circumference of the Earth. So it's not just almost as big as the Earth, it's almost twice as big. So there's got to be something wrong. Let me show you something else. So I thought, let me find out how big the perimeter of Eurasia is, for instance. That's a pretty big area, all the way from, well, the whole Russia, Asia, the whole, Asian continent. Let me see what the perimeter of that would be, because there's a lot of coves and jagged edges around that. How far is the perimeter of Eurasia? And AI says the perimeter of Eurasia is approximately 60,000 kilometers or 37,000 miles. 37,000 miles. Though this can vary slightly depending on how the coastline is measured and which borders are included. Okay, 37,000 miles. Let me show you what that would be on the map, what that looks like. All right, there is Antarctica, the visual perimeter. Now let's just slide over here to Eurasia. You think that might be a little bigger? So what actually defines Eurasia? Well, it goes all the way to, it includes Saudi Arabia and Europe and Sweden and Russia and Asia and all the way around. So they're saying that is about the same size as Antarctica. What if they're being caught in a lie here? What if Antarctica actually is about as big as all of Eurasia? What if that's accurate? What that would mean is that the Earth wouldn't be round or anywhere close to being round, but would actually be some other shape. That when you get to the bottom when you're going towards Antarctica and you get to the coastline, you're not actually at the bottom of a globe, but you're still a perimeter of something. And this might help us understand why the moon is got a shadow on the opposite side, especially when you can see the sun in one horizon and the moon in another horizon, and yet the moon's not a full moon. It should be able to make a full moon because you can see the sun going down over the horizon, you can see the moon coming up over the horizon, but yet the moon is only a half moon. And the opposite side of the moon is being darkened than what you would think. If it's the Earth shading the moon, then it should be on a different side. What if what if there is an actual dome around the Earth? Maybe it's a cylinder, and the dome is like around the Earth because the Earth is like a cylinder, and the light is shining. Maybe the sun portal is at one end of the cylinder, and the moon portal is at the other end. And when the light's coming through the portal, it is being blocked by this dome or this covering. And maybe that's how it's refracting or reflecting, so that it's like literally the moon is dark on the opposite side it should be. And why it should be dark on any side, because there's not a clear way for the moon to receive sunlight from the sun because of this dome which might be blocking it above us. And I'll show you that something like that's going on here in a second. I've got a demonstration that somebody has done to show you that. But I also have another question here. I'm going to ask AI why all of Eurasia is about the same size as Antarctica when it visually doesn't look like that. Let's see what they say. So I wrote, why did AI tell me that Eurasia perimeter is 37,000 miles, but the Antarctic is 33,000 miles when Eurasia is visibly much larger? And this is the answer that they gave me. Nothing. Whenever they don't have an answer, they just don't answer it. So I finally found a thing called Note GPT after asking AI itself how I can ask it a question. And they gave me 3 AIs to ask. And this was the first one. So I wrote it in the box, the same question that I've already tried asking them. And this was their answer. The discrepancy in the reported perimeters of Eurasia and the Antarctic ice shelf, sorry for the wind blowing, arises from several factors related to the nature of the coastlines and how they are measured. Coastline complexity. The Antarctic ice shelf has a highly irregular and jagged coastline with numerous bays, inlets, ice formations. The complexity increases the total length of the perimeter when measured in detail. In contrast, Eurasia, while larger in area, has a more smoothed out coastline when viewed at a broad scale. Scale of measurement. The length of a coastline can vary significantly depending on the scale at which it's measured. This concept is known as the coastline paradox. If measured at a very fine scale, including every tiny indentation and projection, the perimeter of the Antarctic ice shelf could indeed be longer than that of the Eurasia, which measured a coarser scale. Dynamic nature of ice shelves. The Antarctic ice shelf is constantly changing due to melting. Who cares? Geographical definitions. The way in which the boundaries of Eurasia and Antarctica ice shelf are defined can also impact. Okay, this is ridiculous. In summary, while Eurasia is indeed much larger in terms of land area, the intricate and dynamic nature of the Antarctic ice shelf's coastline can result in a longer perimeter when measured in detail. Now, friends, I'm going to show you something. This should clear it all up for you. All right, once again, there is the Eurasia, which includes Saudi Arabia, Europe, Sweden, Russia, and China, and India. And there it is. And it practically includes the whole perimeter of the Earth. Now they say, well, the coastland on Antarctica is more jagged. Look at India. Look at all the inlets. Look at all the little coves. What, you got to go up through into the Gulf, go around Saudi Arabia. You've got to go through here. All this jagged Italy, up and around through Spain. We've got all this jaggedness. Look at all these little coves and little islands. Come on, this looks more jagged to me than Antarctic. Than the Antarctic. Let me show you the Antarctic again now. There it is. Look how small. Okay, yeah, there's some jaggedness. But this is impossible. This is some kind of a lie that I've caught them in. So, what does that mean? What is the shape of the Earth? Well, if these figures are true, and since they're lying about them, maybe they are, then maybe it is larger around Antarctica because the Earth doesn't stop there. That's just, maybe the real equator isn't at the equator. Maybe it keeps getting larger from the equator as you go south. Maybe when you get to the Antarctic ice shelf, you're just beginning. Maybe you're getting close to the actual equator, which means the Earth must be much larger, but it could still be a globe. Or maybe it's a sphere. But if it was a disk and the perimeter just keeps going beyond the ice wall, some have drawn pictures like this, and they're proposing maybe there's a land beyond the ice wall. You see that first white circle? That's the ice wall, but within that is our continents that we know of, Africa and America and Asia and so forth. But beyond the ice wall, see, there's other oceans, and it keeps going, and then there's another ice wall. And perhaps these other planets are actually suns that give them light in the distance. So one thing I thought of, okay, let me get some measurements of the North Arctic ice shelf and see what that is. If it's much smaller, then we might have a top-looking thing. Because I've said in the past, the way that the northwest, south, and east directional thing is in the Bible isn't the way we do it today. We have north and south and east and west like a plus sign, right? In four directions outward from the center. But in the Bible, it seems to be that north is always up, south is always down, and east is always towards the sun in a rotation, like the sun, and west is the opposite, where the sun sets. So it's different. So I have said that the top of the Earth, because all the land masses are all on one side of the globe. See, the rest, if you look at all the land masses are on this side of the globe. But if you turn the Earth around on the back side, it's just all water. So I believe that's the abyss. And that would be the widest perimeter. And the land masses would be a great mountain. And the center of all land masses is right here in Egypt. That's the center of all the geographical land masses of Earth. And so the Bible then is saying that the Mount Ararat, or Mount Earth, is all the land masses of the world. And when you go to the coastline, you're going down into the bottomless pit. So in that case, the widest perimeter would be around the outer edge here. So I wrote in this little AI, what is the perimeter distance of the Arctic ice shelf? Not the Antarctic, but the Arctic. I push the button, see what we get. The Arctic ice shelf does not have a fixed perimeter because it is not a single continuous feature like the Antarctic ice shelf. Instead, the Arctic consists of sea ice that forms, melts, and shifts with the seasons. The perimeter of the Arctic sea Ice changes drastically throughout the year, expanding the winter and the summer. Here's the general idea. Winter maximum in March. The perimeter of the Arctic ice can extend to about 15,000, 16,000 kilometers, or about 9,000, 10,000 miles. So the Antarctic is 33,000 miles, but the Arctic is only 10,000. Now, we're told that, well, it's not as cold up there, maybe. Well, it still gets about the same temperatures, 50, 60 below zero. And maybe the Antarctic gets a few degrees colder, maybe up to 70 degrees or 75 degrees below. I think it gets pretty much about the same in the North Pole sometimes. But it doesn't seem like that would make much difference, 50, 60 degrees below zero or 70 degrees below zero. It should still be cold. And since the Earth is supposed to be a perfect sphere, then the angle of the sun shining on the North Pole as opposed to the South Pole should be about the same. Because you got winter, summer, the wobble should be about the same. It should be the ice shelf at the North Pole should be about the same as the ice shelf at the South Pole. We're always kind of told that, and then now they're saying no, it's like 3 times smaller. So why would it be 3 times smaller? In fact, when you look at the Earth on Google Earth, you don't see any ice up there other than maybe Greenland, which it just looks like snow, right? Not ice. So they're still calculating this. So during the minimum in September, the perimeter would be significantly smaller. Note, the Antarctic ice shelf with a perimeter of 33,000 miles is much larger than the Arctic sea ice because it is a continental ice sheet surrounded by ocean. But you see, the ice shelf doesn't just cover the landmass of Antarctica. It extends out into the ocean a little bit. So if it can do it in the South Pole, make ice shelves, why wouldn't it do it just as well in the North Arctic area? But the Arctic is an ocean surrounded by land. For precise and up-to-date measurements, satellite data from organizations like NASA or the National Show and Ice Data Center would be required. So they don't know, but they're admitting that it's only less than 9,000 miles around at the North ice sheet, but 33,000 miles around at the bottom ice sheet. Now, again, maybe it's just that it's colder and there's more ice accumulation at the South Pole. But
this right here, I want you guys to look at the shadows. Pretend there's a giant sun above the horizon when the sun is rising, and then the moon is setting in the west. There have been people film this phenomenon with a camera. There's the sun and there's the moon. There's something eclipsing the moon, they say. It's the globe Earth. But look at where the shadow is. This is back in 2014. One of my friends, Ron Hagberg, took this picture. The moon has a shadow on top of it. The Earth's shadow should be on the bottom. That's right, yeah. And I tried replicating it in a lab, tried to get the shadow to jump up there, but shadows just don't jump like you want them to. And they say it's refraction. But in order for it to be refraction, it would have to be refracting the moon from the other side of the world up there for the shadow to be on top of it. And so I looked up, is the moon inverted? Because then it would have to be flipped upside down, because they tell us it's upside down when you're down here looking at it. No, it's not upside down. And then I watched the footage of somebody that filmed it. The moon was actually coming down from above. It was setting. So it couldn't have refracted up if it was already up high coming down. It wasn't like it just played peekaboo one time. It was already there. But even the name Selenelian comes in 2 parts. It means sun, Helios. So they weren't giving credit to the globe when they invented that word. They were giving credit to a sun god for causing it, because they were smart enough to know that a globe can't cast a shadow on top of a moon. If somebody ever says the eclipses don't work on your biblical Earth model, yeah, they do. You can replicate it.
So notice how that ball, which I would say would be like the moon, notice how half of it is shaded and half of it's still got light. Now, I can't quite tell where the light's coming from, but I think because of the front top, you can see whether it's lit up. I think the light is coming from in front, and it's shining beneath the dome and over top the disk, Earth. And when it's done that way, then the light is like coming in through a portal like the sun would be a portal, as we suggested, and it's shining, but it can't shine out into the vast vacuum of infinite black nothing, as they believe, but it would stop because there's a dome or the end of the envelope that we dwell in, which might not be very far, could be a few thousand feet, miles, we don't know, but the sun and the moon and the stars and everything's within that dome. So when the light is shining through the portal into the dome, we've already suggested that maybe the sun and the moon are portals, negative and positive, light coming in and the moon reflecting or something at the other end of the envelope. Maybe like a cylinder or an envelope. But if the sun is shining through the portal into the envelope under the dome, then the dome might be reflecting the light from the portal of the sun coming through. It's hitting the dome and then bouncing back down. Now, that I could understand because there's something like a reflective dome crystal, Bible says it's like a crystal beaten metal work or something that's a hard firmament. And if the sun is shining and it bounces off the top of that and then reflects down on the top of the moon, which is at the backside, that could account for, like you see in that picture, the sun being on top of the disk, but yet the shadows also on top of the moon rather than being on the bottom side of the moon. And that might be then why it's not just a full moon, because of the sun having to refract off of the dome. I'm not saying that's true. I'm just throwing that out there. I mean, there's so many questions here. But did you hear what he said, where he was talking about the ancient ones called this effect that we're noticing just now by observation, going out up on top of my hill and looking at it and noticing the shadow on the moon's on the wrong side. And it should be a full moon because you can see the sun and the moon clearly in the sky. There should be a direct line. And none of this makes any sense. I can see definition on the moon. It can't be that far away. I can't see definition on a mountain 40 miles away. Yeah, there's atmosphere between me and that mountain 40 miles away, but there's certainly atmosphere between me and the moon 240,000 miles away. But I can see clear definitions and craters and everything with my naked eye. The face on the moon, right? So there's all these odd questions. But the moon, when it's up in the sky in the daytime, should be always a full moon if the sun's up in the sky as well. Right? There's nothing shadowing it, not from the earth. And so they're saying, oh, but yes, because the moon is not very far away and the moon's way far, far, far away. And therefore, if you could see the right angle, the sun is shining on the moon from a different angle than you're looking at the moon. So it's going to only show the bright side on that side that it's shining on, and you're not standing at the same angle, so you're getting a little bit of a shadow. The problem is that you can stand there in the sky and look behind you and there's the sun, and in front of you there's the moon. It's a direct line. Everywhere I can see the moon, the face of the moon that faces us, the sun can see it. And the sun should, I don't care if it's 93 million miles away or quadrillion miles away. The angle's still the same. It should be a full moon. I have seen it many times. Many of you have seen it. And none of this makes any sense unless maybe there's a dome that it's bouncing off of, like we see in this demonstration. So what did he mean by this selenium, which is what the ancients called this effect? He said something about they didn't attribute it to the sun. They attributed it to some deity, some powerful other deity shining down, making the shadows and so forth. So I looked that up. So that guy was saying, I'm in a different location, probably sounds different here. I had to plug this phone in. But the guy was saying that the ancient ones didn't even think it was the sun that was making the shadows and the light on the moon. But they attributed it, he just said, to some divine goddess. Well, the moon. The moon is Selene, or Selena. And she's described here, as it says, as having horns. Well, that's interesting. Remember, the devil's got horns, right? Where do we get that description of the devil having horns? Well, the devil is Yahweh, and the whole situation there with Moses going up to Mount Horeb, or the mountain of light, he goes up to the mountain of light, and it says that he's so bright they can't look upon him, and they have to veil him. But when he goes up to the moon, he's not all that bright, but he comes down, he's got horns. He's got 2 horns. You've probably seen or heard about the painting that Michelangelo made or did, where Moses has 2 horns. He said, well, where did Michelangelo get that? Well, he was probably, well, most definitely a member of one of the mystery schools that taught the esoteric occult wisdom, meaning hidden wisdom, that they called the mysteries, that the Apostle Paul was bragging about how he knew all the mysteries. Well, the mysteries were made known by the Christ and his apostles at the appointed time, once and for all delivered. But those mysteries, why would we then say, well, Moses had horns, like he's evil? Because you look at where did Michelangelo get that? Well, in Exodus, it says that Moses went up the mountain, came down with 2 horns. But the word that they translate, in one, I think the Latin Vulgate, it uses the term horns. But in other translations, it says beams of light. He had 2 beams of light. Well, okay, so they were horns of light. They weren't necessarily evil horns. And so I know a lot of you are going to be pretty upset with me, but I think this is the truth, friends. This is what the ancient esoteric wisdom teaches. There is no evil in the world. The Lord's in charge of everything. There is night and there's day. And these are 2 brothers. And the dark side is the lower ego. And he's lesser, but he serves a purpose. Now, there is another twist to that, because, of course, the darkness doesn't exist. It's like saying there's yes and there's no. There's that which is and that which is not. And that which is not is the brother of that which is, right? So it is a delusion. It doesn't exist. Darkness is something we overcome through graduating, and it's the lower ego, and we progress and advance and all of that. However, it is then a kind of light, not a very bright light, because we haven't attained to the great gnosis, but it's a schoolmaster that leads to Christ. It has some light. It's a lamp leading through the wilderness or the darkness. John says, I'm just a lamp. Jesus is the true light that lighteth every man that cometh into the world. Okay, represented by the sun, the bright light. But this lesser light, it's its own light. It's the lower ego. It has nothing to do with the higher divine love. They're opposites. And the moon is just something that exists temporarily to give us light as we're going through the darkness. And then boom, here comes the sun. So yeah, it is 2 lights, but they're dull lights. They're not bright lights from the sun. Moses was giving you 2 rays, not the whole bright radiance of the sun. They were horns, and they're the teacher in this darkness, in this world that as we go through this world, human beings are put under some restraints. There is an actual law that you must obey in this universe. Has nothing, Moses' law is just representative of the law of the carnal world, which is what, like gravity and the laws of physics and so forth. You can overcome those laws with aerodynamics. You don't fall down and go splat. A higher law trumps the lower law. Nevertheless, the lower law will be forever in the lower realm for the lower individuals who need that glimmer of light, that vengeance, that training, the discipline, until they become heirs. So yes, 2 lights, 2 rays, 2 horns. I think we've shown then the ancient ones definitively believed that the moon gave its own light and was not reflecting it. And you've probably seen the depiction of Hathor, the Queen Mother, the Virgin Mother, who is depicted as looks like a moon between the horns of a bull. So it says that Selene, like the moon, is often described as having horns. The Orphic hymn of Selena addresses her as O bull-horned moon, and further describes her as torch-bearing. Well, remember John says, I am a torch or a lantern, but I'm not the light. And granter of fulfillment and favor. Empedocles, Euripides, and Nonnus all describe her as bright-eyed, and common epithet of the goddess Athena, while in a fragment from a poem possibly written by Pamperpius, she is called dark-eyed, calls her silvery gray. So notice it says that after she's addressed as the O bullhorn moon and further describes her as torch-bearing, I don't think I caught that. I missed where it says feminine and masculine. So maybe she was androgynous, not necessarily just female or even just male. And this might ruffle a few feathers, but this is the esoteric knowledge. That which was first, the first deity is not the greatest. You look in the Sumerian tablets, the abyss, the Absus, is the greatest. She's the father, and the seven-headed dragon is the great mother, right? That's the bad people, right? We're trying to get rid of them. And even the deities that they made, their own children, were trying to get rid of them. And finally, it was Enki, Yahweh, that killed his father, Absu, and then took over his kingdom in the abyss. But his mother, he never got rid of. Now, he brags about it in Psalms. He says he killed the seven-headed dragon in the sea. This was also claimed to have been done by Marduk, which is actually would be Ea Enki's son, so it would be Yahweh's son was Marduk. So they're claiming this together that they killed the mother, but they only killed the dragon of chaos and darkness by creating order, which is the lower ego, which is a voice of some kind of order, which is the law, but it's not the ultimate. We're looking for the light. We're looking for the gnosis. But so they didn't really get rid of the dragon. It keeps coming up out of the bottomless pit, and raising its ugly head. The great first cause, the chaos, is the first, but not the greatest. So we keep going down with these deities that keep getting stronger. Yahweh was once the king of all the deities, but eventually this darkness was overcome by the Son, which is Jesus, right? And Jesus is the greatest, the Son of deity, the Son, who came later and becomes the heir, and it's all transferred to him. So Jesus is now, in bodily form, got the fullness of the pleroma of all the divine beings, the fullness of deity, meaning his father, his mother are within him. He's one with all of these. Every one of the 72 deities is within us, the temple, the form. Let us, Elohim, us, plural, make man for our form, and they inhabited us. We're the temple of the living divine being, which is plural. The fullness of that divine being dwells bodily in Christ, who is the head of a body. We're all the same. We're also the only begotten. We're that single seed, which is Christ. So why then does Jesus say, my Father is greater than I am? And obviously he did everything for his mother and said that she teaches you all things you need to know. Well, because remember, all the fullness of the divine is in the Son, but it's all in the mother too, because she's androgynous. You notice that she's male, female, and so when you look at Baphomet, it looks like a very evil symbol. All these gargoyles do. He's half male, half female. He's got wings. He's got calves' feet. And he's betraying the astrological signs, the archons. But those are the ones who rule, of course, over the darkness, because it's Yahweh and all of his demons that rule this world. So that's why I don't read my astrology. I overcome it. I choose what I wish. I pray, and with faith, I make things happen. I don't wait for the deities to tell me what I'm going to do. But the fullness of the divine was the Father, Mother. But that is now bodily fullness in us. So, yeah, the Father and the Mother were the original divine being that is not of this world, so that chaos isn't our divine Father. Our divine Father is the highest light. He is spirit. He is the source. So it's not even the same being when we're talking about the Father of Jesus Christ. The point here, though, is that the devil with the two horns, in many parables and esoteric wisdom sayings, teach that the devil really is androgynous. Some say, oh, it's a woman. Well, she has aspects of a feminine person, and then you usually call the moon feminine. And the moon is primarily ruling over the night. She shines her glory on even the fallen stars that are the wandering stars to whom is reserved the blackness of the darkness for the ages, not for all eternity, as you might read in your own Bible, but that's just for the age. They're suffering for an age, and then they arise on the horizon, and death and hell is opened, and they come out. Because like Cain, who was punished to the land of Nod, or the darkness, he only had to be there for 7 times, and then he'd be redeemed. And so the woman is the daughter of Cain, Naamah, and she had already gone through the 7 generations until she got to Lamech. She was the daughter, and now she could be redeemed by Noah, and she became his wife. And so this is what we mean when we talk about redeeming a woman. And the Judeans, they started taking it too literal. So they began to literally pay money to have a bride and make her their slave. Well, that's not how it works. The woman represents the conscious mind, and it's going to wed the spiritual higher consciousness, and they're going to be working together as one. But right now we're in this lower consciousness, the lower ego, and that's the woman who is the lower consciousness, learning from duality what is good and evil, and she partook of the knowledge of good and evil, and then gave also to her husband. She's the one who goes down into the world, partake of knowledge, become wise. She's Mother Wisdom, Mother Nature. And her wisdom then is imparted to us. But she's the one who's initiating us all into these mysteries. So the higher mind has all knowledge, but not in an experimental way. And its other half, the being of the universe, has 2 halves. The thinker and then the observer. And the observer can analyze, and it's more to do with, like laws and learning and graduating. And so it's the sinner. The woman sinned. And yet, she's what we're trying to get to. She's learning the knowledge, and we want the knowledge. We want to lift the veil and go into, because she's the whole. She's that ancient wisdom from the bottomless pit. Notice that it's a woman who rides the beast who's coming up out of the bottomless pit. She's in control down there. And that's that infinite wisdom of the infinite past that we've already gone through trial and error, through gnosis. She's getting the gnosis from her innermost bottomless pit. It's wild and it's rebellious, And she's writing it and training it with her understanding and light through getting information and gnosis, awareness, but it's the lower conscious awareness. It's got to be given then to the higher consciousness so that they can then work together with spirit and flesh. And the wedding will be the endless joy. Flesh and spirit inseparably joined to bring the endless joy and everlasting felicity. But to get them wed means that we've got to get to a place where down here in this conscious world, we can communicate with our higher spiritual self, the power that makes everything happen. But the lower self is the one that makes the decisions about where we're going to do it and how we're going to do it, because it's got experience, and they work together. So we need the moon and we need the nighttime because we have to rest. We need the day, we need the sun because we're going into the light to build and to plant and to do our things, but we need them both in equal time. And so we're in the present, which is a place between the past and the future, right? We're in a place where we're continually trying to make the reality better by learning from the past and building on the future. So this is why you see the Divine Mother Hathor, Isis, and Selena in one aspect as a moon between two bull's horns. Because in the spring on the horizon, you see the star Sirius coming up. That is the Virgin Mother. And she's coming up, and then right before her stands Taurus, the bull. Now, the Divine Mother actually is the star in this esoteric astrological way of thinking. Alcyone, the star, is in the Pleiades on the shoulder of Taurus. She's riding the beast, the bull. And she's the same spirit as that which is in the moon. She's now coming up out of the Duat, or the Sheol, and she's got all this wisdom, and now she's reigning and riding the beast. So you could say that in a relationship with a man and a woman, the man is in charge because he's stronger, right? But the truth is that the symbolism is not quite like that. The woman has the knowledge to know what to do, where to put that, what needs to be done. The man is more like the worker. He's got all the energy, the higher being that can perform these jobs. But the woman is the one who knows how to do it. So you kind of get your instructions from her. Well, we go down here and it says, like her brother Helios, the sun deity, who drives his sun chariot across the sky each day, Selena is also said to drive a chariot across the heavens. There are no mentions of Selena's chariot in either Homer or Hesiod, because they don't mention her very much, but the Homeric hymn to Selena gives the following description. The air unlit before glows with the light of her golden crown, and her rays beam clear, her two horns. Whensoever bright Selena, having bathed her lovely body in the waters of ocean, and donned her far gleaming raiment, and yoked her strong-necked, shining team, drives on her long mane horse at full speed. At eventime in the mid-month, then her great orbit is full, and then her beams shine brightest as she increases. So she is a sure token and a sign to mortal men. So the point here is that the ancient ones believed that the moon didn't reflect light from the sun, but was her own light. She had her own light. And during her trek around and her orbits, she would shine brighter and have various horns, and other times she would be more happy or just bright or bright-eyed or some dark-eyed. But it was her strength, her moods. It wasn't something reflected from the sun. Now, I would say that I would probably agree that the moon is its own light. And I've explained this before, that light doesn't come from anything, right? Like, you look at a human being that's very bright and happy, and they're like, oh, you're really bright today and happy, and you're full of light. I can see it gleaming from your eyes. Well, okay, there has to be some kind of energy to even have the energy to walk. Every human being is glowing, and we have some kind of energy, some happiness, some vitality. Everything has its own strength. Now, yeah, I need sunlight to charge my batteries, but I am still warm to the touch. Not necessarily because I laid out in the sun, but I am emitting heat. Everything, the trees, the animals, our earth has heat within us. Even the scientists say that under the mantle of the earth, there's hot magma. It's very hot. And so the concept that the moon is reflecting light from the sun is only because scientists in recent times have decided that the moon and the planets are like dead. They don't have any light or any life. And they're just these rocks flying around in this universe without divine mind, just in some accident, some lifeless rock. And it's somehow reflecting light, but not love and energy, but some violent fire, explosions, nuclear destruction. It's all violence and evil, and it's just accidents. And so all these suns are violent central explosions, and they shine light and they reflect off of rocks around them. Well, okay. But what's really happening, something they don't understand, is that it's like a battery. The battery's always got the charge in there as long as it's charged up. It's got the 12 volts. It can power a light. But if the wire's not connected, the light don't come on. The light doesn't have, you're not getting energy flowing from the battery, shining onto the bulb and reflecting off of the bulb. The light is not a reflection of the battery. The light itself is emanating energy because there is a little filament in there, and there's little, well, they call them atoms that are being excited, and they're giving off energy. They're releasing energy. It's like when you put a log on the fire, it's releasing energy and it turns into fire and it has light. So that little filament never burns up. It takes a long time to burn up because they put it in a vacuum so that it doesn't burn up in one big lightning strike and it's gone and it burns out. But it keeps burning kind of like a wick. Like you put a piece of paper in some wax and the paper doesn't burn up right away. It does eventually, but it's much slower because it's burning the wax. It becomes a vehicle, a flowing river of that energy from something. So yes, we can say that the energy is flowing from the battery to the light down the wire. In the case of the sun and the moon or the earth, there's no wires, but it's like antennas, right? But when that energy gets to the light bulb itself lights up. So wherever the source of that positive energy flow, and then there's a negative flow at the other end, wherever the source of that positive flow is, that's going to be the side that's lit. So in the case of the earth, we know that we light up when we are in direct contact with the sun rays. It's not light traveling from the sun to the earth. It's just like a wire. It's like going through the air in wavelengths. And it excites the energy that's actually in the planet and warms the planet, and it begins to heat. Like boiling water on the stove. The water is actually hot, right? It didn't get hot by itself, of course. You have heat underneath of it, but you're actually transferring the energy, and now the water's getting hot. So yes, we may be transferring energy from the sun to the moon. But I think in the case of the moon, what's happening is that, remember, the moon looks about the same size as the sun. And so it looks like the sun is a much brighter energy source. That makes sense because we can tell that certain things that made out of certain elements shine brighter, some or maybe more inclined to produce heat or infrared or something else. But the sun and the moon and the earth aren't actually getting their light from themselves, but even the sun may be getting light from the center of the galaxy, which may be getting light from some other swirling vortex of energy, wherever the central sun is, which is what? Mind, the divine being, which is our thoughts. So in a sense, the light that's within a human is we picture it in our brain, our mind, we picture our feelings in our heart, and the physical at the bottom. But you could say then that our sun would be our head, and the moon would be in some other particular location, and all the planets in graduating chakras or energy points. So all of these energy points are producing energy depending on the vibration and how much of that source energy is coming through, and it breaks up just like light into these beautiful colors. Each has their own variable or variant or quantum. And so inside of each color, we could break it down more. There may be multiple billions of trillions of infinite numbers of colors and vibrations, but we can demarcate them into 7 colors, just as they demarcate the 7 planets or the 7 chakras. So in that case, the moon itself is its own light and has its own kind of energy, and it's necessary. And the fact that the moon's dark on one side and light on the other at times may be because when the moon gets in a certain location in space, it may be lined up with some more central sun. It's not even the sun itself. But we don't know, and in all of this is speculation, friends. So, in conclusion, because we are over an hour already, quite a bit, I'm going to try to make this short and conclude this. The point of all of this is that, yes, maybe the earth is flat. I know I said I'd never believe that. I don't believe it. I don't know. Again, it is a hologram, so there really isn't any shape to it. Except that, yes, there is shape. Because just like my body has a shape, I have hands and 5 fingers, and this is the manifestation of mind, but it does congeal and have certain forms. I do believe in the physical form. I believe the Lord created it, trees and mountains and bunny rabbits and little birds, and all of this is going to be an infinite universe. And I don't think that there is a vast, far-flung, infinite blackness of space, like I've said, and the stars aren't way out there. I came to that conclusion first. I started speculating about the sun and the moon, and I'm going to tell you that I don't know, and I don't think anybody can say that they do know. And I want to probably say here to somebody like Santos Bonacci, I shouldn't have been so hard on you. It did sound to me at first as though this idea of a flat earth was ridiculous. And I still think it may not be the best way to describe it. But I'm sorry that I, didn't understand what you were talking about, Santos. I don't know what you're doing, and I hope you're doing all right, Santos. And please forgive me for some of the things I've said about your opinions. I still don't necessarily agree with all of your opinions, but you have to understand it's difficult because we have a tendency to want to okay, don't get crazy and start coming up with crazy things and start teaching people crazy things. And I still think that alien abductions and all these kinds of things are crazy. A lot of things are still crazy. And I'm not saying I believe in a flat earth, but I do think that it's possible. One scenario, one model, and this might be my favorite, is that we are in a kind of a disc-like shape with kind of a mountain, you might say, the top of which is the top of the Earth at Heliopolis. But outside of the ice ring, I wouldn't be surprised if we did go beyond that and find other oceans and continents, and then there may be other rings, and I think ultimately we have 7, and the 7 planets each rules over each of one of these rings. But just like colors, you can take light and cut it up into 7 colors. But I think that when we're capable of distinguishing more advanced, I think we'll find there are more demarcations in each of the demarcations. So we only see a certain small spectrum of light. There's a greater variety in the universe. The 144,000 is just the beginning. It starts with 1 and goes to 2 to 3 to the 7 to the 12 to the 24 to the 120 to 144,000, or the 72 and the 144,000, and infinitely grows until a great multitude, which no man could number, is reached. So I have a tendency to believe that, we've already been to these places. How we get there? We got to go to the, beyond the ice wall and see what's there, paradise. Well, perhaps it was in the infinite past, a place of a better, kind of like a paradisical type thing, because we're all trying to get home. And I think that there might be dinosaurs on some continent beyond the ice wall. There might be. I don't know that. And I'm not saying there is. I'm saying there might be. But if there is, I suspect that's our past, and that the future is infinite like the past is. But the future is getting to the top of the mountain, going to Heliopolis, and it's a spiral, isn't it? And beneath Heliopolis, there's a Vortis cave. Yeah, Kiryat Arba was it was the cave where the skull was, where Adam died or something, or where he was buried. And it's above that is the Great Pyramid, and there's the empty tomb. But underneath that place called Bethel, which you can find out from the Septuagint version of the Bible, that's the same place we call Heliopolis, or Bethany, where Lazarus was there and John was baptizing, and James was the Zadokite teacher, high priest, prince, that flung down this gavel there at the Sanhedrin that Jesus chose, the 72 also, and the 12, and they reigned at Heliopolis. But, of course, the Romans destroyed that in 70 as well. But what's on the top of the mountain, right? What's in that swirly vortice? Well, under the vortice is a swirling infinite past into the abyss, and above it is a tower that reaches to heaven, which is knowledge. And where does the tower, what is that? That's the temple, and the divine being is within the temple. So we get to the top of the mountain, we go into a building, not made with hands, the divine building. And we go in, and it's going within. That's where we're going, within the infinite within. And we've been on the infinite without. And when you finally have awareness and you can remember your past lives, then you're immortal. See, then you don't keep dying, and you learn how to use your mind to think of happy things and live in a paradisical storybook world, right? With the princess and the prince and all the beautiful animals and little deers and little rabbits hopping along, getting a little drink from the beautiful waterfall in the stream, and the flowers and the little frog sitting on the lily pad, and the lotus flower, which is wisdom, coming up from the depths of the mire. There's that wisdom. There's that serpent, that salamander that's got that wisdom. So we've learned from the past, but we're going to the future. We're going within a more refined world, the source. Okay, but we don't live in the source. We simply gain access to it. We go in and we go out no more. In other words, we're able to communicate with the divine Shekinah feminine energy that has this great wisdom and becomes one with the infinite being, the I am, and together they reign forevermore in the kingdom of yore. So, anyway, I'm going to leave it there. I hope you guys have a wonderful evening. May the Lord bless you all. His grace and peace be with you. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a good one, friends.